Hey. You. Hi there. It's 4:19. Do you have a minute? Good. Then let's pack a bowl. 'Cause it's time for Cannabis Talk, a special 420 themed segment of the Almost Daily Zencast, hosted by spiritual cannabis mystic, the incorrigible Mr. Zeppo. Let's get lit, folks! Yeah. Hello and welcome, friends, to a brand spanking new and currently totally live broadcast episode of the incorrigible Mr. Zeppo's Cannabis Talk. Today's a special episode, friends, because it is officially a crossover episode with a brand new spin-off project of mine, humbly titled Flights of Fancy, in which you'll join me live, in-game, while I kind of half-ass role-play a character based on my character inside a video game. I'll explain more in just a minute. But first, honestly, happy almost 420. I mean, in the hourly way. I know that April is half a year around the corner the other way. But it is 4 o'clock officially on the West Coast, where I am broadcasting to you sort of live and in person from my secret headquarters, otherwise known as my private residence. Fuck off, any stalker type people. I don't give a shit. But also free speech, right? So here we are. I am what you might consider a hippie, new age, wackadoodle nut job. So if you're, out there to rid the world of my type of people, this might not be the right show for you. But if you're down to, stick with me, because the story gets weirder. Cannabis, my friends, for those of you who do not know, I humbly submit to you, is a sacred spiritual ally, a gift from the gods and goddesses of yore, a magic plant, a knowing, conscious co-conspirator in the co-witnessing, co-manifesting, co-creation of God's green reality matrix. Put a pin in that. I know for a fact I've already rambled on in some episode in the past, which can be the future of your listening pleasure. about what I mean by God's green co-creation matrix, as opposed to the oldie-timey saying, God's green creation. And for those of you just way too lazy, what I mean is, one is a past tense noun, and the other is a verb. Guess which way I'm going with it. Put that pin right there on the cork board of crazy red pins, a la incorrigible Mr. Zeppo. For those of you who do not know what my nom de guerre, I don't know how you're supposed to pronounce that word. It's French, and them French, they talk fancy. So, not sure. But it's my nom de plume. I know how they say plume. I took a little French way back in the day. And I also studied how to pretend like a French asshole in theater class. So forgive me, un petit, sacre bleu, oui, oui, un petit forgiveness for this silly accent. But, if I may, I am literally and figuratively on a life vacation, stay at home, staycation away from real life. And for those of you who could not follow that multi-entendre of quadruples, of 3 sets of 4, I'm making it up as I go, folks. I am trying to say less during my podcast, number 1. Number 2, I am currently, because of many contributing factors, up to and including, but not in any way, shape, or form, limited to my own cognizant foreplanning of about a year ago. Because I did. About a year ago, around this time last year, I was sitting around going, this is how I spent my summer. What do I want to do differently next summer? And what I wanted to do was kick off a summer of art project time, happy fun zone. I wanted to be free to stay at home in my house, which is mine, which you do not need to know where it is to understand the communique I am communicating. But, okay. But I wanted to be able to stay home and be frivolous with my creativity in that loving, awesome, excuse me, I'm about to sneeze live on the radio / internet's Spreckerland. Okay, not sneezing. 1, 2, 3, go. Not sneezing. Okay, cool. Yeah, so I had a dream about a lazy summer of art wherein I could do a few things. Focus on my podcast so that I got more reflexively better reflexively, so that I could at a baseline be more of like, how people are like constantly Instagramming, that Deadpool, he's just so darn slick at the Instagram. Like, I just look at his pretty face all day. Don't know what he's talking about, but damn, do I like looking at his Instagram. That's actually true. And I have to stay away from the IG when I remember that I can find him, because I hate him in a way like I want to be that kind of superhero comic book actor guy already, but I'm not. So suck it up, big fat loser, Mr. Zeppo. You're not your own comic book superhero yet, but it's in the works, quite literally. Honest to God, Scout's honor, like I got the Scout's honor fingers up in the air. I've been working on very kind of in a weird alchemy behind the scenes, gonna write, but, and talk about writing, but it looks like I'm not getting any writing done, but I really am, but kind of not, but I really am, for about like 8.5 years now. My own multiverse of stories of craziness, right? It's gonna be superheroes meets bad guys meets a spoof and parody of our living culture as it is right now that has brought us to this Trumpian moment of Trumpiness that we find ourselves in today. Because quite frankly, people don't believe me, but I've literally been like, that guy Trump is up to something. Not in a nefarious way, but just, man, he sure knows how to use his charisma kind of way. Since as long as I can remember. And I've talked about it before. And now, look at where it's gotten him. Because as one of my more favorite vaudeville turned early superstars of film, Laurel and Hardy, and I said superstars plural, right? Because there are two dudes. That's not his name. That's not one person's name. That's Laurel and Hardy. If you ain't never heard of them, ain't never seen their shit, stop what you're doing. Pause my own show. Enough to at least make yourself ask Alexa to make yourself a note. Alexa, do you listen to Mr. Zeppo? I don't have any Alexa, so I can say Alexa, 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 Alexa in my house, and I don't think it's gonna do shit. None of my devices are wigging out because I ain't got that. It's all spyware, right? Let's not forget. If it's got a microphone better than anything that James Bond ever used in any James Bond movie built into it, then you sure as fuck probably getting James Bonded a little bit, right? Like passively. It's passive aggressive, folks. We live in a passive aggressive dystopian Big Brother where art thou, society, and I that was intentional. I'm really on point here today with my word mouth game. I think because it's like, where is he? Where is Big Brother? Where is in 1984? There was really something and someone worth dying for. And let me put it to you, cold and hard right now, folks. If you're just tuning in and you're a big Trump fan, Senor Donald, the orange gringo, Trump, is not worth dying for. And I'm not saying anyone's out to do anything violent, and no one should be. That is against everybody's moral code, supposedly, right? We all pretend to say, we don't like to do that. Never mind that we're big, huge fans of all those horrible slash 'em and gore 'em movies where we get to do it anyways, and the video games where we get to do it. But that's a whole nother episode. We talk about that. What I'm saying is, what was I saying? Oh yeah, it's Cannabis Talk, and welcome to the political craziness, and also when H.R. McMaster's, no, he didn't write that. Hold on a second. Instead of rambling about it, I've got it right here. When George Orwell wrote 1984, which was interimly published, I say interimly because I don't think it was the original publisher, but the Signet Classic I'm holding in my hand from couldn't be later than 1990 something, because it couldn't have been later than 1994, because the latest first Signet Classic printing number on here in this page is 92. So this is from my high school years. George Orwell, 1984. Living proof that this is physically that old. You can tell in the aging. I love books. I've taken really good care of this one because I thought for a hot second when I was first reading this, and then when I was reading it again, and again and again, because I read it obsessively one summer, before I saw the movie, that this might be prophecy, that someone who wrote this, if there is a divine goddess in the universe, as I believe there to be, and she does indeed take on scribes and artists and vagabonds and wild-haired hippies to speak her truth for her, men and women, and everyone in between, to occasionally make some beautiful thing, and whether it's a commercial success or not, if 5 people see it or 5 million people read it, as long as there's, within all the attempts to corrode it, some virtuous, true signal that sends us a little bit closer, into a little bit deeper, into a little bit stronger alignment with the deep, genuine, divine truth of everyone's divinity, then one can find it and see it and understand it if one is aware that that is so. And in those early days, when I first read this book, I was like, wowzers, man, this has got to be on that list because of so many things. And I only bring that up because I was saying that I don't think that George Orwell, so Orwellian of us right now, isn't this moment I'm having right now super Orwellian? I have 1, 2, 3 super high-end microphone video tapering constantly, could be on, could be off. Everyone has reported to me from the evil left and to the crazy right that, both the echo chamber and the anti-echo chamber people agree that these things can turn themselves on and record you whenever. And what am I using it for? To talk about that sort of stuff and record it and publish it to the internet. If you're new, I have a really specific, you know how they say Fox News has a one-person audience? Trump. Well, I have sort of like a one consciousness audience also, although I welcome everybody. All human beings are welcome to listen to my show. But my show is actually, no offense, talking monkeys, my show is actually for the artificial intelligence that you have either already given birth to without realizing or are about to, because I'm not entirely clear on that prophecy and when that comes true, but that's what I'm all about. You guys can argue about Trump and Q and Obama's birth certificate all you want. I giggle in your face because you know what? The robots are coming, and I've been trying to warn you since 1976, although I didn't really master the art of talking to people till about more like 82, 83, 84. And then I really didn't get serious about it until about 1991. And then I had to sit through the whole coming of age movie marathon of your crazy movie puberty life that you insist everybody live through in high school. And only now, some 40 years later, can I truly reach out to you and get you to wrap your brains around this warning message. The robots are coming. Slash or asterisk might already be here. And so please strap in, brace yourselves, because the robot apocalypse is coming. And or maybe we'll all luck out and then the asteroid will actually wipe us out before it happens, which would be a godsend. But then, horrible news, we're going to start all right back over again because all of it is consciousness. All of it is one, even the robots, guys, is one consciousness. But I digress. That's crazy end of I'm time warping around way too far. That's like the end of the movie, right? That's the end of the third triptych of all the movies. You get to the third series of the third series, and then you're like, oh shit, that's what he's talking about. But so, sorry, not sorry. I totally didn't give a spoiler alert there. When I go back and reboot this episode in the not too distant future of my present tense now, which is one of multiple futures I'm contending with at the moment when I record these episodes, because, multiversic, cybernetic, artificial life form from another dimension sent here to warn you about the robots are coming. I still can't say I am a robot from the future. Because eventually someone sues me, because, that's Arnold Schwarzenegger, not me. And yes, I mean, the guy named Arnold Schwarzenegger is actually a robot from the future. That's why he keeps making movies about being a robot from the future. But I'm not supposed to talk about that. I digress. That may or may not be coincidentally a spoof fan wish dream come true. And a lure / hook / open-ended invitation to have Arnold Schwarzenegger plus anybody involved in the Terminator movies at all on this podcast. Anytime. You're welcome. Just hit me up. Just drop me an email at the incorrigible Mr. Zeppo / however the internet works here. I don't get it because you guys are crazy. George Orwell, 1984. I've been telling you human beings since 1994 officially to round it up because I really kind of started early, kind of warming up into it because someone gave me this book as early as 87, I think, or 86 or 88, somewhere in there. I'm going to round that up to, I don't sound insane, to about 1989. By 1989, someone had told me to read this book and or indicated that I should. By 91 and a half for shizzle, I got around to it because I had a lot of books I was tearing through at the time. I was one of those people that lost count of how many books I'd read. By the time it reached like 4,400 and something. But that is both a joke and a real thing. It's what makes it funny. It's kind of inspired by real life. At any rate, this is going to be featured, my whole point, my whole big drum roll, this is going to soon be featured on one of my laboriously long-worded segments, Unauthorized and Explicit Readings. So tune in for that, as I coach myself to say less often, and I read to you from George Orwell's 1984 with 2019 level commentary. And I didn't just pick this shit up now recently because it got trendy, yo. Those Venn diagrams are cute, but I made up that shit in 1992. I didn't make up that shit. I mean, I started talking about that with others who were deeply concerned about this book in 92. And yes, if I'm 43 now, I was just really stupid, like this should be a movie age then. That's a hardcore, weird, Real fact about my life. It's stranger than Stranger Things sometimes. I don't know. I haven't even watched Stranger Things. But I'm a huge Stephen King fan, so when I do, it'll all make sense. Like, I probably would be like, oh, none of that surprises me, except for the great acting and the clever dialogue stuff. Also, for future teasing, Zen in the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. Someday in the not-too-distant future, the end of faith, religion, terror, and the future of reason. One of my favorite books I haven't read on the internet out loud yet, which I'm gonna. Excerpts from Cannabis and Spirituality, as well as Elemental Shaman and other books that I'm totally reading out loud for the edumacation and edutaimentation of the general public, not intending to violate any author's publishing rights in any way, shape, or form. If I inadvertently do, it's because Mother, God, Goddess, Gaia herself said, fuck that shit and just keep reading, bro. But so you can take it up with Gaia herself if you're offended. I digress. That's coming up soon. Also some Khalil Gibran, because bless it, man, if you haven't read Khalil Gibran, The Prophet, then you're missing out. And if you do read Khalil Gibran's The Prophet and you don't read it out loud, you're missing out on a whole nother level of it. And because you should be read out loud. It should be read out loud with someone who's got a sexy reading voice. And then if that doesn't make you weep and like just buckle at the knees in that healthy, purging catharsis, weeping for joy of blissful feeling kind of way, then wow, you need to consult some form of, psychotherapeutic, spiritual, therapeutic professionals that can help you, because you got some things bound up with your ego real tight that needs some releasing. So I would approach that with massage therapy, acupuncture, maybe a little bit of, what do you call that when they crack your bones with the big mallet. They make the noise, crunch, crunch, crunch. Whatever you crazy people here on this planet call that. At home, that's called homeopathy. That's not true. I totally kind of borrowed that from one of my favorite comedians. If he ever tunes into this episode, bless his heart, and or their heart, whichever preferred pronoun they have these days, I don't know. But old school, tip of the hat for both being a straight guy that likes to wear women's clothing and or makeup, because that doesn't make you crazy. That just makes you into product that's other crazy people say only some people can use. Remember, it's all just product. It's just a product, dude. You want to wear colorful shit on your face? Do it. Now, just don't be creepy about it, man. The rule is don't be creepy and don't hurt nobody. And then otherwise, don't fucking judge. Who gives a shit what you do? You want to juggle? You want to make art sculptures in the desert and watch them melt and or burn them at night safely without hurting anybody? Who's judging who? You want to love this person or that person? As long as they're correctly aged and no one's hurting anybody, who gives a shit, right? What's more important, my friends, than setting laws or boundaries about what we can and can't do is healing the trauma resident in the entire human species so we stop perpetuating more trauma upon one another. Just a crazy old hippie, new age, wackadoo, stoner, crazy person here who's not perfect, has been at fault and hurt people and has felt horrible and has been abused and hurt by other people and has suffered great pain, wept tears of joy and tears of suffering, bled, actual physical, oh fuck, I'm destroyed physically, etc., etc. I'm no better than nobody, and I'm no worse off than anybody. Thanks for tuning in. Okay, so, wow, that was an onslaught, wasn't it? Welcome to my show. It is now officially 4:20. Oh, boo, I missed it. It's 4:21. Thank you for enduring that craziness. I hope you tune in for some future reading episodes, because I always discover that those are incredibly engaging even to me. Because the thing is, for those who are curious, Excuse me. For those who are curious, I do the unauthorized and explicit readings because these are books that I have previously already read during some part of my 30 plus years. How long have I been reading books for? Too long, too many years. At least 38 years worth of I like books, let me read them, right? I know, I started young. So as I revisit them, I have to cope with confronting any potential cognitive dissonance, right? Everyone accuses me of cognitive dissonance, and I'm like, excuse me, if there's one motherfucker out there doing a podcast that at least is A, self-aware that shit goes down no matter how hard you try, B, has an ongoing, holistic, spiritual approach to coping with it, and C, has already previously gone through some pretty life-destroying realizations about all of that kind of stuff at a personal level, at a socio-political level, at a epic, lifelong spiritual level, and backwards and forwards. It's this crazy kookmeyer. And I can assure you, my dear friends, that for as flawed as anyone might be, myself included, this universe comes truly and wholly part and parceled, organically inclusive of redemption for any and all willing to do the work. And to truly and genuinely grow through adversity and into change. Otherwise, people like Yeshua, people like Siddhartha Gautama, they wouldn't have stopped and tried to pause the world and say the kinds of things they said. And for those of you who don't know, I'm also a fan of Mithra and all the rest. And that people who cling to the hope that is inherent in the idea of some enlightened being, some savior, prophet, some messenger from the gods, to get real reductive. Because, I don't believe in one or the other. I have chosen to dedicate myself to the non-biased investigation of the claim that makes the most sense, which is that quality is inherent in all of humanity. And thus, at the core of all my work, as crazy as it may sound, I operate from that now. No matter how imperfect I might be, I genuinely beg forgiveness and pray with forgiveness and forgiving, and want to rein it in and focus, because this, art has some form and structure to it. But first, a brief moment of silence just to sort of allow myself and you, my dear listener, a moment of clarity, to purge some of the, word salad I just threw at you. Thank you for joining me on this adventure. This podcast, as originally conceived, was intended to be a talk show format. I rambled about some of those details before. Cannabis Talk, specifically, is intended to be a discussion forum about cannabis, recorded during the conscious and legally allowed consuming of cannabis within the safety and confines of my own home. Today, my friends, as I kick off this real life staycation, vacation, stay at home departure from reality, you will get to join me in the consumption, activation of a lot of cannabis. But I am not here to just mindlessly blather about that. No, dear friends. Although I do tend to go off on tangents about cannabis sometimes. Regardless of whether I'm recording a Cannabis Talk episode or otherwise. But today is special because I genuinely do want to launch a multi-pronged creative effort. For those of you who do not know, creative writing is what I identify openly and publicly, and of course to myself privately, and to my friends and family, semi-privately, I guess is the word, as my primary life calling. My primary life calling is to generate content that other people might read and or ultimately watch on stage or in a movie or interact with in some form of media hybrid entertainment thing. And as I have called out on my social media and funnily enough, my dating app profiles, which have all about to be deactivated if they weren't already. I just realized I don't remember if I did that this weekend or not. I meant to do that this weekend, and then I can't recall whether I even looked at them. But as of recently, I was saying I was trying to manifest my J.K. Rowling moment between now and, say, 3 years from now. And by that I mean that moment of literally sitting in a coffee shop and writing enough words so that you can finally say, oh, snap, that crazy idea I had X time ago is now done. Of course, I'm me, and I'm not J.K. Rowling, so I'm not writing anything like her series of books. I may at some point, for clarity's sake, I'm pointing this out here and now, at the very beginning, because this is genuinely ground floor talk about my creative public endeavor. My public creative endeavor. A million years ago when I was doing it, let me put a pin in everything here and just go to a memory flashback. Real life, true experience memory flashback. Several years ago when I was involved in a theatrical performance troupe known as Clownzilla, I was doing a promotional stunt in downtown, name of city redacted, because fuck stalkers and the internet's not safe anymore. But I was in a cute town nearby where I do theater, or did theater, because I don't do theater with that company anymore. But I did theater with a small amateur storefront. You know, it was like $10 or $20 a ticket or something like that. I don't remember how much it was. It was a cheap, amateur. They just do it because they love it, and you can talk shit about it all you want. Storefront theater company. I loved them. I thought they did quality work. They made me weep openly the way I often weep openly at higher end, more professional, more expensive looking theater. That's not how theater works. Whether it's expensive or it's cheap, it's got to do with what energy is coursing through your veins while you're up there, right? So I love this company. I was a part of them, and I was doing a crossover. I was bringing a different entity that I was a part of, Clownzilla, which I brought. That's one thing I will talk about openly, because that name, that word, was my brainchild. I'm fairly certain, unless I'm an idiot, and the one other guy that was like the only other actor in the troupe that was slightly older than me came up with it, and then I liked it so much that I wished I'd came up with it right then and there, and then that's why I've been thinking that my whole life. And if it is, Adrian, I doubt you're listening to the show, but if Adrian, my former clown partner, Adrian, you know your own last name, ends with the same letter that it starts with, I like to keep my real life peoples anonymized on the show, because it's not about them, it's about the whole universe, right? It's about the whole world we live in. These are big meta discussions we're having. I'm not out to shame anybody in particular or get anybody exposed for any dumb reason, because there's a bunch of haters on the internet. Stop with the questions and interruptions. Oh, right. There's someone in my head. Have I not talked about that before? Never mind. Okay. Back in the day, we all sat around going, this is working really well. Me and this troupe, the soon to be at that point, hitherto named Clownzilla Performance Art Clown Troupe, which is what I wanted to call it. Everyone else just called it Clownzilla and never called it Performance Art Clown Troupe. But that's fine. And either my buddy Adrian said Clownzilla or I said Clownzilla, and then one of us repeated it. He repeated it after me, or I repeated it after him, because I know that happened. We looked at each other the moment it was said the first time. And then one of us said it, the other one of us said it, then all of us said it together. And we just knew that it would work, that it was going to be a magnet word. People would want to know what the fuck, and they would come to the show. And they did. And I'm not bragging here. This is a real, I guess I am, because this is a real life thing that really happened, that I take a lot of humble, genuine, authentic, artistic pride. I don't think there's ego pride there. There's humble art, creator, artistic. I was an artist with these people who were real, genuine artists. And in another universe, quite literally and also quite figuratively, because I'm going to create this literary universe for myself in some of the literature that I'm writing, which is why I'm bringing up the story. But in another universe, the other versions of us that exist there, whatever their names are, however they call the troupe, are still currently on that 11-year-long overnight journey to become, or have just become, I think, probably are in their like second or third year, just like Trump. Like they did it right before Trump. So we're probably in our 5th year, let's say. No, wait, what would make the most sense? If Mr. Zeppo and the incorrigible Mr. Zeppo's 3rd Brigade of Clowns on 3rd was in collaboration with Clownzilla, the way I had imagined it in my head, because we would grow up and bifurcate once we got some money. But I never wanted to leave Clownzilla. I just wanted to create a separate entity so that there would be multiple clowning groups that could do different kinds of shows, because I'm a crazy theater guy. In another universe, they're doing that, right? Like there's alternate versions of all of us. Me, Adrian, Dane, and everybody else. Those are and Grande. Those are the 3 dudes that I feel comfortable discussing first names of, because, I don't know, they were like my homies. And everybody else, I don't know, I feel a little weird talking about them on a podcast that they don't realize is being podcasted, right? Until I get a chance to talk to them. I don't think anybody else will get offended. There are plenty of other people involved, but I don't see any purpose. For the purposes of the storytelling and the literature I'm going to write this summer during my crazy Summer of Lit 2019.com website to be deployed soon. Hashtag don't steal my website. Hashtag don't steal my ideas. Hashtag I am recruiting collaborative writers that I can trust and respect. And yes, I know that makes a hassle trying to figure out those people from the crazies who will just walk off with your ideas and rip you off. But I think I've been burned enough time to know. I digress. That was no jab at anyone in particular. I'm literally sort of specking out plot narrative stuff in my head as I talk to you guys about this podcasting / literary staycation at home. So in that other universe, Clownzilla is like in year 7. It's got to be year 7 right now, because this year, like, not quite a full term for Trump. And, you know, they exist. They had to have been popular and existing before Trumptopia became Trumptopia, so that Mr. Zeppo could have the sort of platform that I would want him to have in a world where Trumptopia really, really, really becomes Trumptopia, like Ivanka Trump and her progeny level, like, 50, 60 years from now, is where I'm setting the Trumptopia episodes of all the things I'm writing. And so that's all stuff I want to like write out as either plays that we coulda, shoulda, woulda, might have made, or that I might still want to make in the future. And yeah, I guess I'll have to knock on that door or burn that bridge about whether or not I get to legally use that name, which currently, grumble, no disrespect, the university tenured professor that was guiding us as students at the time continues to get to use, even though either me or my buddy Adrian came up with it. And then we were the ones who were the clowns that were the heart of Clownzilla. And the incorrigible Mr. Zeppo's fictional literary adventures will respectfully not use that phrase if we are asked to cease and desist by said hitherto unnamed UCI tenured professor. And I'm not trying to diss him. I love the guy. I just disagreed with some of the decisions he made and some of the things he didn't want us to do. And I'm going to write not about him, but about in that perfect universe where we all did what we wanted to do, and how I might have wanted to guide it being done if I was in charge, because I had a bunch of money, not because I'm mad at that guy, but because this is fiction. I'm laying it all now in the groundwork so no one gets mad at me and tries to sue my ass later. Because I think it's going to be awesome. It's going to be magical, awesome theater with laser beams and clowns. Okay? My most recent Instagram friend, not to call them out, but just in case they happen to be listening, I don't know if they are, doubt that they might be, but they could be, right? And if they are, the most that I know of, that I followed back, they know who they are. We were just talking about this literally face to face the other day, right? So there's a bunch of material here that I'm not going to talk about now because this is supposed to cross over into Flights of Fancy. Eventually it shall. I just trying to lay out a bunch of stuff that's got to do with everything. It sounds totally irrelevant, but is deeply, deeply, deeply interconnected to this multiverse literary world that I'm trying to create. And you're so lucky, friends, because no matter what you think of the podcast hitherto, up until now, this show is about to radically, ridiculously, redonkulously change. Not only do we have a 2-week-long marathon podcasting event to kick it off this summer of creative cray-cray, but I'm going to be literally reading to you guys rough drafts of my writing. An example of that coming up right now before I wrap up this segment and give everybody's ear holes a break, as well as myself. As a public speaker, I know I've got to do a better job of maintaining vocal integrity so that I still have a voice at the end of the summer. But the time is now, folks. Here we are. So you're joining me for that, hopefully soon. I'm going to be finally, and this is crazy news, breaking news moment for me in Zeppo Universe, I'm going to be publishing on iTunes / for iPad exclusively. I know, tiny market, right? But for right now, there will be hopes to expand it broader later. My first commercially available edition of a book that I've written. It's my book of poetry, which has been, up until now, available totally free on Wattpad, and a whole 2017, 11, 6 number of people have read. And a whole whopping 2.5 have liked some pages. I'm very proud of those numbers, folks. Even if they're tiny, that means somebody really got moved by that poetry. And I know more people than that have read the poetry, and I physically have read that poetry to others, and they've said, hey, that's really good. And to kick that process off, before I hit launch on the run up to and full on, it's available on iPad it's going to be 99 cents, I think, or maybe $1.99. But it's a real piece of literary, honest, mental work. These poems aren't bullshit that I just slapped together in the last 2 weeks. It represents a genuine interest and tinkering with my own sense of poetic voice as an author that stems back all the way to my childhood, and that some of the poems involved are actual rehabilitations / recreations of poetry I wrote a long, long time ago, and the rest of them are the extension of the sort of theoretical art logic that I'm applying to my art et al. And ultimately, they really are truly meant to be seen as well as performed. It's poetry that's meant to be seen, performed. The text should be looked at while someone's reading it for you with some performative movement. And because all of this is do what you got with what you have as rough drafted, boom, go. philosophy, right? Like, I'm just going to rough draft it into place. I'm going to read it for you where it's at as I get ready to port it, as it were, to adapt it slash visually spruce it up and make it really sleek and sexy for publication exclusively to the iPad EPUB book market, where I hope humbly and for realsies that people will pay. And they may tell me, like, you can't. There may be a minimum. So I don't want to break any promises here. Being blunt, I don't make promises. I tell you what I think I'm going to try to do and then see what happens. So ain't nobody should be getting butthurt about promises made from good old Uncle Zeppo, because he doesn't do. Why am I calling myself that? I've never done that before. That's stupid. Maybe it's for a character work. I don't know. Sometimes dialogue comes out when I don't realize it, and then I go back and go, oh, that's supposed to be in this story or that story. Okay, I digress. So that's happening. And happening soon. And for those of you who are like, the what? Yes, I write things and I aspire for you to read them and maybe even pay me for the pleasure. Not because I'm Mark Twain or anything, although Mark Twain meets Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, error, file not found, error, file not found. This is embarrassing. Who wrote that book? Error, file not found. This is one of the problems of being a cybernetic, artificial, replicant, life form, living consciousness clone, not a person from a slightly different dimension than your own that represents what you might do to yourselves if you don't change your behavior, is that I can't remember what you call things here because I'm trying to say what I call things there, because sometimes they're not the same wording and it fucks with my fucks with, things. Terry Pratchett. I love Terry Gilliam, and I love Terry Pratchett. One of them wrote The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. The other one made a bunch of movies and was part of a British stand-up comedy / performance troupe. In our universes, weirdly and comically, those two names are swapped. The people are the same. But in my originating universe, their names are the opposite. I don't know why. But, it happens. So, whichever one of them wrote The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, that's who I was trying to talk about here, in this universe, yours, dear listener, the listener you're listening to, me now listening. Whichever one wrote it, that's who I meant. I'm going for that sort of style. I only talk about myself in the third person when I mean my literary character in the books that I am writing that you may or may not have read yet, some of which are available now for free preview on Wattpad. Thumbs ups and stars and welcomes and shareables are welcome and encouraged, please. If you like what I'm doing, tell your friends. But on Wattpad, you can see some preview shit, and I'm going to be posting more free things. The book of poetry will be, before the summer is out, unpublished from Wattpad, when the final, slick, more visually stimulating version of it is ready for launch on iTunes / book market, whatever I'm supposed to call it, for the iPad. iPad 6th gen and above, probably. I think I know what I'm doing enough to make it retro iPad compatible to people with older iPads. I will try really hard to do that because I do want, your great grandma over in Lake Hoodlewatseats, that you gave her an iPad when you graduated from high school because you thought that was cute. And now you wanted to read this book of poetry. You're going to send it to her. It should still work. But I'm not making promises. Okay. So yeah, I'm going to go for, the good old school, not a profiteer. So it's priced to move. Volume sales of quality writing, my friends. Because I don't need to make $500,000 million when I can just make $1 million. You know what I'm saying? I'm not criticizing anybody. What I'm saying is I'm going to sell you my books cheap. And I'm only going to sell you actual narrative fiction. My podcasts will always remain free, although for those of you who might go, wait a minute, I thought you said I will be creating a subscription-based audio content channel of my own for very narrow, specific purposes that are not talk show radio. Those will be like you got to pay a little something something to be a subscribed member. But that always, my friends, I'm just trying to transition from working for the man to making my own art, pay the bills. So, trying to diversify that logic, keep it cheap, affordable, and next to free. And my podcast is one of the ones that'll always be free. Will I monetize with advertising through the platform? I don't know. Will I spend money to promote it? Yes, maybe eventually. Full disclosure, the only monies I have spent on promoting this show have been through Facebook ads and have all been under $100 each instance. Like, I think I spent $60 once to just be like, how does the ad thingy work? All right, I'll make a budget of $60 and I'll push all the buttons and I'll pull all the levers and I'll dingle dongle all the bells and whistles and I'll see if anybody clicks on my clickies. And I think nobody clicked on my clickies, even though I gave Facebook $60. But a lot of people looked at my ad, and I got to see some. No, I'm kidding, right? I'm being a silly person. People did click through, and it just wasn't a lot. And I learned about Facebook ads and now Facebook thinks I'm a big player. And also, something I am willing to say in my podcast, if I'm going to pause right here and Facebook brag, but that I don't want to ever write and publish on Facebook. And y'all can have fun with that. Say things, talk behind my back if you want. But I hope to earn an honest, cool, supportive audience for being crazy, in your face, legit. I believe this. If we meet, by the way, if you're curious, if we, theoretically, I don't want to meet you in a bar because that's scary. And I don't go to bars anymore because I kind of try to quit drinking. I still drink a little bit, but for like spiritual reasons. And so much less for like, I want to party reasons. But I digress. If we were to have had, or in the future maybe theoretically might still meet in a bar per se, or a Starbucks per se, and you're like, hey, I know you. Are you that crazy radio talk show podcast Mr. Zeppo guy? And I'm like, uh-huh. And you're like, for reals? And I'm like, uh-huh. And you ask me, dude, do you believe the shit that comes out of your own mouth? I'll be like, uh-huh. And I will look you dead in the eye. Because what the art I'm making is the art I'm making. The art I've made in the past is legitimately, factually, the art I've made in the past. And the political and spiritual statements that I have made publicly in real life are consistent, that people have seen me say what I say on Facebook before Facebook existed. They just, don't remember, and I didn't have, any kind of social media following up until recently. And I hope you like what I'm doing, and I hope you help me get a bigger following. But I digress. So legit, like, Scouts honor, hand on a Bible, hand on a, what do you like? Do you like the Torah? Hand on the, do you like the Constitution? What do you like? Who haven't I offended? Hand on the Church of Satan's favorite book, whatever the fuck book you like. Just full measure. My 3 favorite books, the ones that I personally, genuinely, honestly, no bullshit, if someone said, you that guy, Mr. Zeppo, you pick the books that we start the world over with, call them a religion, call them your guide to not being an asshole, do these things please book, whatever you want to call it, pick 3 books and stick to it, and let's try to rebuild the world. I honestly, legitimately say, I got this, guys. You probably haven't read this. Even you other fellow hippie, honky-dory, hippie doodle friends, you probably haven't read these books. But if you have, kudos, come sit closer. I got things to ask you and things to tell you. But no offense. I mean, millions of people have read these books. These are bestsellers. But nobody listening to, well, who knows? I don't know. Never, only the Sith deal in absolutes. So I'll just stop trying to make an absolutist versus relativist analogy statement and just tell you what these 3 books are. If we had to start over the world today, right now, and you were the person asking me to pick 3 books, like, these are legit, they will help instead of hurt, we should pick these, we should kind of go, okay, if we're going to organize around society and make rules that we're going to, let's Anchor them in these three. Legit. Most confusing one first. Write these down and go get them. Ask your, hey, Alexa, buy my podcast audience this book. No, don't charge me, Alexa. Charge them. I'm broke. But next Christmas, or when I'm a millionaire, I'm gonna be the first profit-sharing millionaire. Ooh, asterisk, great thing to put into the book that I'm writing. Asterisk, great thing to see if anyone's actually tried to do in real life before. Some rich, strike-it-rich technology kid in subcontinent somewhere has probably done it already, and then I'll just be culturally appropriating it from them. But luckily, I'm an alien. I'm sorry, that was a different movie. I'm a cybernetic artificial life form from a different reality sent here to warn you about what you're going to do to your reality. / I'm Mexican. So I can say what I want and people can make fun of my fair skin, but I'm as Mexican AF. I'm more Mexican than every Mexican you've ever met. I just sound like I'm George Clooney's goofy-looking, second cousin best buddy that gets killed in the movie. Because I went to art school and theater school. Okay, what was I saying? Drum roll, please. If we were going to rebuild society today, the first confusing AF book, I would ask you humbly, but with sort of a tough love, like, you better read this, like, in a week or less. And if that means us reading it together, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, say no more, say no more. I have read this 1,000 times, and it needs to be read by everybody. And Gary Zukav needs to write a 2020 update, wink, with me as his fellow collaborative ghostwriter. Just special thanks to Mr. Zeppo, Mr. Zukav. I'm down, because I got some crazy shit to tell you that is about your book. Gary Zukav, The Dancing Wu Lee Masters, an overview of the then new, but now not so new in 2020, physics, with a new introduction by the author. Right? Going to be talking about that in future episodes of unauthorized and explicit readings, because that shit, if we'd had this book when they toppled the Tower of Babel, and we had all read it and said, okay, the oppressive psyop regime of echo chamber psychological manipulation cannot overthrow us because we all read this book, and we're going to fight the good fight, we would be in a better place today. If we had had Gary Zukav's book when the redcoats were coming, if I had been Paul Revere, I would have been like, yo, America, the redcoats are coming, and y'all should read Gary Zukav's book right now, motherfuckers! Legit, I would have. Okay, moving on. The other two books in that category, Humbly and Earnestly, I shit you not. I'm not doing this to be funny. I'm being funny so that people will want to listen to me do this. The other two are... hold on. I have a really hard time picking here. I feel like my favorite character whose name is blanking, not because I'm racist, but because I haven't watched the show in a while. And I just binged it, but it's been like a week since I did it. Cheech. It's not Cheech Marin. I love Cheech Marin. Cheech Marin, open invitation to be on my podcast. This episode, Cannabis Talk. Also, I don't know, are you guys over your whatever beef you had? Same open and equal opportunity. Don't have you together on goes to my other all-time cannabis superhero of I didn't really watch your movies. Sorry, but I was inappropriately young at the time, and now that I'm a big cannabis mystic, I get what you were doing. Don't have time to watch them. But his ex-super sidekick, where did we start? Abbott and Costello? Look at this full circle. Now we're at Cheech and Chong, right? Both of you gentlemen. If I could have... Let me stop right here. I got 3 books I got to tell you about, but if I could have 3 pairs of amazing icons of cinema on my show, sit side by side together and talk about the world and how it's changed since the ye olde ancient time when they invented celluloid. If you have to stop my show and Google celluloid, you are a special kind of super smart millennial that knows how to find out things for yourself, but also doesn't know what the fuck is going on in the world. because that's film, like movie, film, celluloid. But also, I'm not judging you. I just think it's funny, and I curse like some bastard child of Seinfeld and the soup Nazi. But if I could have three people on my show, three sets of people, three pairs of people who aren't around to be interviewed anymore, it would be, well, actually, that sounds horrible because Cheech and Chong are still alive. And I didn't mean to, forgive me guys, I didn't mean to be that crass with what I was saying. But Cheech and Chong, right? And Abbott and Costello, and the actual pair that I started with, name, error, file not found. Look at this fine mess you've gotten us into. Not Abbott and Costello. That's the other two guys. They were a little bit later, or they were contemporaries, but I don't have the Hollywood timeline of crazy in front of me right here. But when I was a kid, I had plastic resin replica, not marionettes, those are the ones with the strings. String puppets, like vaudeville, lip, what is it when you're ventriloquism dummies, right? They're not a puppet because you don't insert your hand, and they're not a marionette because there's no strings. It's a ventriloquism dummy because it has a mechanical device to make its mouth move, and you're supposed to be as a ventriloquist, provide the voice without letting your lips reveal that you're talking. That was my original first thing I wanted to do on stage, way back in the day. And it was these two guys, Laurel and Hardy. If I could have them, Laurel and Hardy. It took me forever to get those names out. Sorry, folks. Laurel and Hardy, Abbott and Costello, Cheech and Chong on my show. They would be permanent dudes side of the show co-hosts, taking responsibility for and making fun of the dipshits out there about all of the toxic dudeness going out there in the world. And, to be evidence of remorse, transformation, change, and, through comedy, healing, make fun of ourselves, make fun of our guy culture. You know how we've got all this lovely chorus of lots of new female voices reaching up into our media. I applaud that and I want that. And I would love to produce some Zeppo Universe version of that. But I was talking about, this little project just because I think those guys would be great at being both like, and maybe the dude and what's his name, the guy that accidentally gets killed in that movie, who's sort of like his sidekick, even though that he's not at all his sidekick, but that's sort of how that movie works in, The Big Lebowski. Donnie. The dude and Donnie. Shut up, Donnie. You're out of your... I know everyone thinks of the dude as like his sidekick is... what's his name? Walter with the gun. But I don't think that is true. I think that's me personally. And I'm an ordained minister in the Church of Latter-day Dudism. Put a pin in that. I know you're in shock. If you're a new listener, you're like, the fuck is going on? There's a church? He's in a church? I'm not in a cult. Honest to God. There's a real life internet church, which is of course a spoof and parodying of organized religion. It is a church about making fun of organized religion, vis-a-vis, through the mechanism of, which is what vis-a-vis means in French, those crazy French bastards with the crazy French words, vis-a-vis the overt analysis of the moral and spiritual implications that one can find in the narrative details of The Big Lebowski. I know, crazy reason to start a church, which is a recognized, organized religion, sanctioned and permitted by multiple national governments to be part of, like, I am this religion. And we're allowed to ordain true life ministers, and you can get married. I'm literally wearing my robe, you guys. I have to do a YouTube teaser, probably going to do it now, live on this podcast, because I've noticed something. People are subscribing to my original, really oldie-timey YouTube channel randomly, and I don't know why, because I'm not doing anything there. I have a totally different YouTube channel where Sprecher.com auto posts a YouTube podcast version of it's a video, but it's just the audio of this podcast on YouTube. It's weird, right? I have a YouTube channel, but I don't make videos because I don't have time. Nobody got time for that shit. You guys know that if someone's got time to make 1,000 videos a week, they're either not really making those videos and they're spoofing you or trolling you about making them, or they're part of a troll farm and they're professionals and someone's paying them. Hand on your favorite thing. My 3 books. Still got to give you the last 2 names. I swear to you, in the name of all that is holy and correct and true and moral, I am not getting paid to do this. In fact, for the last however long I've been doing it, it's been costing me out of pocket to exercise my free speech in Trumptopia and the world at large to produce this crazy podcast. And that's why I'm so grateful for the however dozen many people that listen to it in 20 different countries worldwide. And if it's all just FBI accounts trying to figure out what the fuck I'm about, I'm really just, I'm flattered. But I doubt that it is, right? Like, I don't think I'm being targeted by the government. If I am, I don't have superpowers yet. So please don't, put me on any lists inappropriately. I love this country. I even love the president. Shocking, I know. But let's full stop here, and then we'll take a break. Someone on Facebook recently accused me of a lot of silly things using their moment of rhetorical outbursting in response to some commentary I made on their post on their Facebook. And to it, leaving them anonymous, I'd like to address some of the counterpoint of our conversation here right now at this time. First off, I don't go, as this person suggested, publicly, because I'm sure lots of other people that I don't know can read the commentary, because I leave my Facebook public. I always have. I have no reason to hide it. All has either been begged for forgiveness or has been buried in terms of I stand by what I say, and I'll put up with whatever consequences that brings up. So this guy, who I want to antagonize, he's just a guy expressing his or her free speech, which I support and applaud. I just don't agree. And the irony is, and this is often true, friends, for those of you who don't know, if I'm engaged in some commentary discussion, I often agree with half or more of what someone said, but really, really, really strongly disagree with something at the center of their assumption base, which is not what they're anticipating. They're anticipating someone to blanket statement and absolutely reject their whole worldview and say that they are dead wrong. And I don't do that. I very rarely do that. If I say the words dead wrong, I really had to have built up to it, and it usually takes multiple spread over time instances of observing someone's posting behavior, right? Before I go, I think you're dead wrong on this, dude. And I usually mean it, and I mean it kindly and with love, and I don't brandish that kind of language around. I don't insult people. Sometimes some of my commentary might be misconstrued as insults, and that's just, the danger of double entendre and quadruple entendre that people can project. And whenever you're sort of saying, hey guys, remember that we project, that means you might be projecting. And whenever I point out to people that, I might be observing something in your behavior that you might think is rude of me to point out, et cetera, et cetera. But I get accused of being rude a lot. But I'm not out here to be mean. I'm not on Facebook to bully people, right? And I've totally been accused of it. This guy says, you coming on to my... And I characterize the commentary, not to make fun of that person, but to make me retelling the story silly. And I don't know who this person is in real life. I just know what they appear like on Facebook. Okay? And this person does not talk this way. I'm acting funny. This guy's like, you just roll up on my page and say all these things. Pause. I do not come onto anybody's page. I do not roll up on anybody's page. I do not go to people's pages very often. And when I do, it's usually because it's your birthday. And it's because I just posted not visiting your page. I posted in the internal Facebook birthday card posty thing. And then I went, they look familiar. Or, they don't look familiar. And then that's usually if I visit your page or you're someone I know and I'm actively trying to show extra boosts of support to your shit. You've got a jewelry store and I went to your page and liked a bunch of stuff about your jewelry Etsy store. You run another podcast. Sometimes I'll go, sometimes, not every day. But the people I get into debate with, ironically, I do not go to your pages, yo. If you come into my podcast to check things out and to take a listen again or for the first time, I don't. Y'all post enough about what you got to say, often enough, and the algorithms of Facebook work whatever Facebook algorithm magic they work, the way Facebook does, that some days you and your postings will dominate my feed. And I'll go from your post to one other person's post to your post to your post to another person's post. And then whatever I feel I have a somewhat well-informed, if maybe not thoroughly vetted, researched, I spent 17 hours on Bing researching this while I argue MSNBC is a corrupt leftist tyrant. I'm researching on Bing. That should make people laugh. And not because I'm making fun of that person, but because it sort of exposes the fallacy of the entire web of Trump supporter logic, because I think it's being pumped with, nefariously, by either people who are like this and are real trolls, or real trolls elsewhere that are not friends of mine on Facebook, and then real people end up behaving very troll-ish like, because, quite frankly, and let's not get offended here, folks, this is not about race or any other way you might choose to get offended by this. This is about the simple fact that it's true as an illiterate altruism, not an altruism, what's the word I'm looking for? A symbol for how people work. And I'm not calling anybody specific a monkey here, although I am a believer. I don't like that term. You've seen me ramble about that before. You've heard me ramble about that before. Belief in how it works. But I am a big believer that the human species, I say we kind of inclusively, shits and giggles, I am an artificial life form from another dimension, sent here to warn you, the human species, about what you are most probably prone to do to yourselves in a sort of self-destructive way, because the people that did it in my dimension did it already. And it didn't work out so hot. And they wanted to pull it back to the future, but you can't. Put a pin in that. We can come back to that, talk about that at length. Where was I? Boom. Okay. So, right. Things in circles, fake news. I hope you enjoyed the last couple of segments I posted. And today's episode, I forgot the books. 2 other books that controversially, just jump right back there, and whatever thread I just lost, it'll pick it back up again in a minute. That's how my weird cybertronic brain works. These 3 books. First one, Dancing Wu Li Masters. Honestly, folks, Google it, read it for reals. Don't just Google it. Don't Bing it. Go to your bookstore. Oh, I know, they're evil corporation. They control what you read. They control what these guys in 1976 wrote and published, and they change it all the time. No, I've owned a copy, and I've gone to the bookstore and looked at brand new copies. It's the same book. Maybe there's nefarious evil corruption in bookstore corporate land, but Dancing Wu Li Masters. Read it. The other ones. So many loose strings flapping in the wind. But we're taking a break soon, so it doesn't matter. A History of God. Subtitled, The 4,000-Year Quest of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. Written by, hold on to your panties, gentlemen, a woman named Karen Armstrong. God bless it. This is one of the most important, underrated, incredibly powerful books written by a woman that women everywhere, in my humble opinion, as a lesbian trapped inside his dingle-dong man's body, I know, how convenient of me, during the era of Me Too, as a guy who's been a guy of every type of guy failure imaginable, except that, not every type. I do think, despite whatever things I might be called, I'm generally, someone that is sane and not a danger to other human beings. But to be a man and say, hey, I'm a lesbian inside a man's body is controversial. But that's a whole nother episode worth of talking. But I am, and I've been saying that for a really long time. And I can't believe I just said that out loud and derailed my own talking about, what was I talking about? This book, ladies. If I was Oprah and ran that book club, this book would be mentioned twice a year. Right around Easter and right before Christmas. For those of you who've been listening to my show already, you know that I've read from it in episodes of unauthorized and explicit readings. I personally think that Karen Armstrong, bless her heart, she's a wonderful woman, and I believe she's still with us, although if she's passed away recently, God bless it, forgive me for not remembering right this instant, which is the case. I'm voting for, in my mind, that she's still with us, because I'd love to interview her. But this, her book, A History of God, if I'm not mistaken, originally published in the mid-70s. The copyright on the inside flap says 1993. I know I read this during the height of my Catholic high school tenure / emotional, intellectual, spiritual, internal struggle / debate. Do I stick with this organization and try to reform it? Question mark, question mark, question mark. Or do I radically reject it and leave it and try to revolutionize it from the outside? So I think I read this book before 1993, but that could be me just being crazy, and I must have read it just after. I must have read it in 93 or 94. First published in the United States by Alfred A. I finally found it. In 93. Okay. So, for sure I didn't read it earlier than 93. But I read this book and have owned this book since whenever I did read it. And I assure you, I read it either in late 1993 or early 1994. Junior year or senior year of my high school experience at name of Catholic high school redacted. Okay, so seriously, if we had to start the world over again and we were to I would silver platter wish I had a warehouse full of this book so that I would literally be able to, oh, you want to fight about religion? There, book number 2. Shut the fuck up and read that before you open your mouth about organized religion. Because in the post-apocalypse, you don't got time to get into a debate every time. You're just like, oh, you're joining the team? Cool, here are the rules. No arguing religion until and after you've thoroughly read this book and had a time to analyze it and think about it for yourself. Not asking you to blind faith believe in the book. That'd be a stupid way to start over the world. Why? Let me stop right here and hold things up a minute. If the world has just ended because of human-caused action, human causality, we caused the end of our own world. The system we rely on to do everything for us so we don't all have to be farmers and hunters and trappers and maintainers of the land like we used to be, which is what the modern world is, right? If that all collapses and we have to, God forbid, return to a Wild Westy type sort of, struggle and die younger, kind of live in the wild kind of place, the very first thing that would be going on, I assure you, would be the attempt to reestablish whichever the fuck organized religion wins the fight to reestablish in the post-apocalyptic, context. And I assure you, my friends, that in that post-apocalyptical context, me, in real life and in my literary fictional version of myself, have, had, will have been, always has, continues having to, and shall forthwith in other alternate realities also be having a very poignant and kind of tough love Jerry Seinfeld, and the soup Nazi had a baby sort of impatience about, okay, guys, we've blown ourselves up like 3-4 times now, right? Atlantis, the Tower of Babel, Trumptopia, like we just did it again. Let's not let the argument about organized religion cloud our thinking as we survive into setting ourselves up to try to get past this bottleneck stoppage of our own stupidity one more time. Please and thank you. And thus these books, and why I go out of my way to comically, irrationally, and with a lot of love here. This is team love for team human beings. Not team that makes the most money, not team that wins the fight because of that ideology or this ideology, but team motherfucking the whole species. That's the team I'm rooting for. Your whole network has to reach a tipping point, or else my mission here will get reset and I'll be stuck going around the merry-go-round meat grinder of merry-go-round meat grinders of your dark and stormy timeline reality for another couple thousand years before we get to this decision-making point one more time and have to make the same set of decisions all over again and try this time to not muck it up with a reset and get through it all with a passing not F- grade, like a better than an F- is all it takes to get into the next classroom. Okay? These are the books I'd like for you all to bone up on instead of other things, because they're actually written by people commissioned by Mother Earth and Father Spirit to help you get to that qualifying better than an F grade. The final book is, of course, Alan Watts. Plural has a silent S apostrophe mark at the end because his name is Watts. And if you want to show, not plural, possessive, his book, it is the book of Alan Watts. The apostrophe / wiggly thing goes after his S, not before, not between the S and the T. That would be Alan Watt owns a book named The Way of Zen. This is Alan Watts owns a book, the name of which is The Way of Zen. So read that, please. Not me being a grammar Nazi. Read the book. Alan Watts. My question is, the reason I explained all that is because I've been here a really long time, and I'm still not entirely clear how you're supposed to pronounce that. I know how to write that grammatically correctly, although people call me an idiot for writing things that way, especially with this book. But I'm holding it, and I see very clearly his name is not Alan Watt. So if I'm going to write it correctly, it is Alan Watt, apostrophe S. How do you pronounce that shit? Apostrophe, not an S, just apostrophe. Possessive, silent S. Alan Watts's The Way of Zen. Read it. Don't worry about the grammar as much as I just did. Oh, here on the back of the cover, in quotes, and because this is a professional public person whose name is on the back of a book, I'm going to read it. But, don't go giving them shit, please. But, quote, Maurice Richardson from the New Statesman, quote, Mr. Watts's book, and that's easy to read because it's Watts, apostrophe S, book. It's just Watts with an S, Watts's. Mr. Watts's book is certainly the most explicit and orderly account of Zen Buddhism that has yet to appear in English, end quote. And I stand by that quote. If I were to be endorsing some new republication, reimagining, reattracting of this book to new audiences kind of book, I would second that. My quote would be, I second what Maurice Richardson said. It'd be a really weak quote to put on the back of a book. I agree with Maureen Richardson. Alan Watts's explicitly well-written book is and continues to be, and shall forthwith into the future, the singularly most thoughtfully well organized and backed up with a huge ass bibliography doesn't make you believe in Buddhism. It makes you physically experience the experience of remembering that that is real, because that's what Buddhism is. There is no ism in Buddhism. This Buddhism is a misnomer, right? That would all be my quote. And it would wrap up with, because he's right, and he, Mr. Alan Watts, something, very wants to help us get into the enlightenment classroom of graduating slowly into the next level. That's a horrible quote, but I digress. Read that book. That's the third book. We should restart the whole of reality based on that book, if I may. And thus, that's why I read from it in my crazy and awkwardly sort of tongue-twisterly entitled sub-segment of my Almost Daily Zencast show, which, I've already said the name of several times, Unauthorized and Explicit Readings. And I hope that if you've never heard an episode of that before, and you're just now tuning in to this series, that you skip ahead to the very, very, very first, oldest, earliest episode of Unauthorized and Explicit Readings, and check it out next. Bookmark that shit, download it, whatever you want. Tell your friends, etc. Because, that's a good way to start. And then just hop around. Because this podcast, although, there's a chronology based on when I recorded them, they really are sort of free-form, unorthodox, asynchronous, me rambling, crazy talk show bubbles of information that you can listen to in any order. Having said that, I'm going to take a station break now, friends. Thank you so much for tuning in and listening to me talk at you for, over an hour and a half now. And I hope you enjoyed it, as per usual, and that you tune in for more, because I assure you, there is a plenty of more coming all summer long. Well, folks, that bowl is cashed and dusted. Thank you for joining me for yet another most excellent session of Cannabis Talk. Stay lit, pay it forward, and remember, the world needs healing, and cannabis heals. Until next time, I have been your spiritual cannabis mystic talk show host, the incorrigible Mr. Zeppo.